All right, welcome everybody. I think that was the game that Jets fans were waiting for in this series, Ken. A very impressive performance. One of the things the players kept talking about in the post-game press conference was they just kept building and building and building as the game went on. That's what I saw. They weren't making it up. Some nights teams try and talk up their performance a little bit more than needs to be, but the Jets were bang on. I thought the better team from the drop of the puck in a series and a game where they really needed to show that they could be the better team throughout the entirety of a game. What were your takeaways?
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. Brilliant effort from the Jets, especially defensively. I mean, we joked about it this morning with Paul. Well, Paul Maurice is the one who joked about it after my question, saying we've had a lot of practice when it came to defending, and the Jets didn't defend overly well in those first two games. That's for sure. One of the bigger takeaways for me, Sean, I know that we were definitely honing in on the measuring stick element, but here's my take on that. I think the Jets, they don't want to talk about how they showed the Maple Leafs that they could hang with them in taking 5 out of 6 points. I think they're letting their actions speak louder than their words. And again, we know completely that the Jets were not good enough in those first two games, Sean, especially without the puck. That changed this evening. And for all the people that said the Jets have no chance in a 7-game series against the Leafs, well, they've got news for you. Because if the Jets play like they did tonight, they absolutely will be a handful for the Toronto Maple Leafs or anybody else in this North Division. Again, they need to do that more than one time, but if you can beat the Leafs with your backup goalie who has been exceptional this year, it says something about the mentality and the psyche of the Jets, and the fact that they were using this act like you've been there before mentality, I think is what really struck me after the game tonight.
Oh, I think they acted like they've been there before. I take this away from this series. So game one, the Jets find a way to win that one in a game maybe they shouldn't have. In game two, kind of get run out of the rink, but they find a way to get back into that game. Either way, as convincing as the Leafs were as being the better team at holding on to the puck, they weren't convincing on the scoreboard. Is being the only team in this series so far to have a convincing win on the scoreboard, does that mean something?
Well, I think it can mean something subconsciously, but Sean, I would also counter by saying in that first game of the season between the two teams, the Leafs won convincingly, even though the scoreboard said differently. Without Connor Hellebuck, I think he had 35 saves in that first tilt. They would have been blown out. So I don't think you necessarily weigh this game more than that one, but these guys know a win's a win no matter what. And the fact that the Jets took 5 of 6 10 days after or 12 days after the Edmonton Oilers were beat 13-1 in the composite score, a 3-game set, I would say that would be what Jets fans should be most encouraged by. And also the fact that they were able to adjust after playing so poorly defensively in this last game. That was the statement. Never mind making statements or, we're here to show that we belong with the Leafs. Again, using the voice of a Jets player. You didn't hear that because they don't feel like they have to say that. They feel like they're a really good team, and they just went out and showed it.
I want to counter a little bit to what you're saying there. So the idea that the Toronto Maple Leafs did run them out of the rink in the first couple of games, and they did, and without Connor Hellebuck, it's a very different story. But this is what we see from the Jets. The Jets win games they don't deserve to win on a consistent basis. And it's one thing if you're doing that against the Ottawa Senators, right? If you're not showing up for 2 periods against the Ottawa Senators and then showing up in the third period and sneaking away with the game, that's one thing. But to do it the way that they did against the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are, the cream of the crop in this division, unless you're putting the Winnipeg Jets beside them, because they now have 2 games in hand and have the potential to catch up with them. But the Jets don't just do this against bad teams. The Jets do it against everybody. They get results whether or not they deserve the results or not. And that has to mean something, does it not? Regardless of how well they were outplayed in the first couple of games. I'm telling you right now, if I was a team and I was going up against the Winnipeg Jets in the playoffs, I would be terrified because I could be the better team in 6 of 7 games in that series and still feel that there's a very good chance I was going to lose that series in 7.
No, I mean, those are all completely valid points, Sean, and I'm with you 100%. And this is the type of game that, as you mentioned, teams around the league that are doing their pre-scouts, they're looking at that template and saying, whoa, that's what can happen when the Jets are locked in and going from there. I mean, there were some things they needed to clean up still. That shorthanded goal is one that can't happen. Brilliant play by Mitch Marner, absolutely. But I mean, that's a perfect shot by Jake Muzzin. And you know what we were talking about on the pregame show about the back checking? Well, Mark Scheifele hustled back and actually took the right guy, but it went to Muzzin and he absolutely went bar down on it. So CP Manson, I do have to clarify, it is not a stolen microphone, but hang on though, it is courtesy of our good friends at The Athletic. So that was one of my parting gifts when I got laid off. So
get the TSN mic flash off there. Yeah.
No, these mics are from The Athletic, and for our other friends that have been commenting on our microphones, Sean and I are using the same microphone. So
the microphones are such a hot topic of conversation. I ran into a mutual buddy of ours who you grew up with and I played senior hockey with, and I was talking with him in his driveway today, and he's like, looks like Ken got his mic issues cleaned up, right? But it's like, we're two guys just trying to figure this out. We've got no help. We're just going to figure this out, but whatever. Let's get back to hockey.
One other thing, for sure, Sean, this is one other thing. So the last time the Jets were on Hockey Night in Canada, they got blown out 7-1 and were terrible defensively, and their number one goalie got pulled. So this was a statement game on that front as well. The Jets needed to play better, and they did. And how about the other thing we talked about before the game, Sean? We talked about the first line had a bit of a rough night in the previous game, even though they did get the extra attacker goal. However, Austin Matthews' line had been the dominant force in those first 2 games, especially at 5-on-5. Tonight, they were excellent. Again, another 9 goals now for Paul Stastny. Blake Wheeler was, creating opportunities. A lot of good passes on the power play again. And again, Mark Scheifele loves playing on Hockey Night in Canada. That's his 12th goal in 18 games against the Leafs. He also got his first NHL goal against them. I think that was an important game for them. On that regard as well. And yes, you have the comment up right now.
Yeah,
Sean,
you wanted to talk about this. Let's let it out, Ken. Let it out. You've been waiting for this moment.
The gong definitely got hit, and we will say this again. We know exactly. Scott Billick, my good friend and former colleague, beat me to the punch when I re-racked into the raising my hand into the Zoom call.
Yeah.
Not to gloat, but I was curious also on what sparked the change, and we knew that Paul Maurice was not going to come out and say it was because Tucker Poolman was having an off night. That's not what Paul Maurice does.
No.
But it had been a bit of a rough go. There were a couple of turnover early in the first period. It was a bit of a tough go. But again, I like we've been talking about, Tucker Poolman settled in a little bit more after he went on to that third pairing with Logan Stanley. What I liked was that both Morrissey and DeMello looked comfortable. Yes, there were a couple of situations where those guys were under duress, but guess what? Everyone is under duress against Austin Matthews when they play against them with regularity. So I like the fact that he stuck with that grouping, and I would like to see that grouping now against a Montreal Canadiens team that has also given the Jets some difficulty in terms of hemming them into the offensive zone and using their speed to make life difficult on the exits.
Okay, let's give a plug to Anthony Stewart because of something you said there. Anthony Stewart, who we had on our Friday live show where we also had Elliot Freeman. Anthony Stewart was absolutely phenomenal. And one of the things he touched on a couple times, Ken, as a player, you could see him coming from this, a player who was coached by Paul Maurice. He talked time and time again about how he's a player's coach in the way that he never hangs his guys out to dry. To your point, he's not going to say this happens because Tucker Poolman wasn't, having the best game. But we've said this, and we've talked about different coaches that take different approaches and are okay with calling guys out in the media. Paul Maurice will not do that, and you have to draw the correlation between how he treats his players and how he doesn't seem to lose a room. I mean, you want to know why this guy is the second longest tenured coach in the NHL? It's because this is one of the reasons. He doesn't call out his guys. He doesn't anger them. He doesn't create rifts. He takes care of everything in house. He doesn't create, he doesn't burn bridges or create problems that he needs to deal with at another time. And while I'm giving shout outs, first off, if you haven't seen our show from yesterday, you got to go check it out. Friedman, it's worth the price of admission just to see Friedman's hair. Yeah, I told him to be casual the night before, and he showed up. He told me, casual, you'll be lucky if I comb my hair. And I said, I dare you not to. And sure enough, he showed up. It was you and I. There's a moment in there where he shows up in the green room and he pops up, and you and I are talking. We just break out laughing because we can see him and the audience can't yet. But it's absolutely hilarious. But he and Anthony Stewart were phenomenal. Go check that out. Go to our YouTube page and subscribe. It's really good stuff. And then there was something else I wanted to touch on here while we're giving shout outs. And I know your comments are here. We're going to get to them. But LJ Dumpy saying, give kudos to the IC boys for sharing your link. You are absolutely right. They are our brothers. We are texting with them back and forth before these shows go on. We are working in unison with them. We're trying to provide coverage for all you Jets fans out there, and they're a huge part of it and have been a huge part of it in this market for decades. The fact that they're giving us a shout out means the world to us because we have all the respect in the world for these guys. We love what they do. We've done their program. Thank you, guys from the Illegal Curve. It means the world to us. You have our respect. And everyone here who's watching, if you didn't check out the IC post-game show before you came to see this, make sure you do it after the next game because they do an absolutely phenomenal job. I'm trying to look for a question here.
Let's go to the third line. Let's go to the third line.
Okay.
There's one about Appleton there.
Well, I mean, and we have to go there. So here's my hot take from this series, and it was my hot take in the first game. It was my hot take in this game, and I bring it up all the time. Borno from Toronto, Justin Bourne, who does radio there, and he works for Sportsnet. He and I had, at the beginning of the year, a little bit of an online clash that was set up to talk about who was the deepest team in Canada. I think this series, to me, is a big check mark in my box that I'm right. I think that the Winnipeg Jets are the deepest team in Canada. I think they're a deeper team and have a team that has the potential to win games with their depth ahead of a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs. Your take?
Well, yeah, I mean, great answer again from Paul Maurice post-game when he was asked by Jamie Thomas about his third line. He said, I wouldn't call them the third line. And that's the other part. We know that line is often second over the board, so I know a lot of times coaches don't like to number their lines, but I mean, generally in terms of time on ice, they're often the third line, and after those top six offensive lines. But guess what? This is not a line that just holds water, to borrow a line from Paul Maurice. These guys played absolutely great in this series. They did a very good job when they were up against Austin Matthews at times, and just great awareness all over the place. It went from a easy 2-on-2 on that first goal. Adam Lowry takes the time to go wide. Mason Appleton with another exceptional net drive. Yes, sure, it went off his skate. Whatever. You create things by going to the far post. And yes, it went off a skate, I think, of the back checker as well. And it was some element of luck, of course. But then guess what else happened? When the Leafs were discombobulated, like we often saw the Jets in this series, Mason Appleton finds Adam Lowry and he drags it to the middle and goes 5-hole. Really good play. Broke a long drought, I think 19-game drought for Adam Lowry. Just an important goal for him. Andrew Kopp with another point. Man, he had another great opportunity on that back post play from Appleton early in the game. That line was just awesome. I mean, I've loved the way that what I've seen from Mikheyev. He's been very good. Engvall was very good in this series. I mean, again, we know the Leafs are missing Wayne Simmons definitely to a degree on that line as well. But, man, the Jets' third line was absolutely exceptional again, especially tonight. But I thought overall in the series, I thought they were quite good. And boy, oh boy, again, this is not a back-patting situation. But when I said in our preview in Sportsnet that I thought Mason Appleton could be the biggest surprise for their team. He has absolutely been, and I was not projecting 8 goals for Mason Appleton, or maybe even 9 or 10 by the time they get to the midway point. I do think he's going to be a 15-plus goal scorer, but man, what a start to the year he's having.
You know, what a nose he has for when he's taking care of the responsibilities that you need to take care of as a third line player. But when you break something open, the nose that he has for being able to understand that a dangerous situation has been created and for him to get a jump on that play, I feel like he recognizes that very often, more often than his defender does. And he gets that jump, and then his speed is so hard to contain. But to put it simply, I just don't think that teams go out and face a third line and expect a third line to be as good as that line is at doing what third lines are supposed to do, but being able to transition into the danger that they were able to create on a night like tonight. And I really do see Mason Appleton as being the genesis of that. And it's interesting because Andrew Kopp showed earlier this year that he can play up and down the lineup. We knew that about him. I don't know that we knew the extent that he was capable of doing it, but his creativity is next level, and you can put him in the top 1 or 2 lines. But I really do think that on nights like this, and in the first game as well of this series, Mason Appleton is the driver offensively on that line. Would you agree with that statement?
I mean, I think they take turns, but Appleton is absolutely emerging as a driver for me, for sure. He's been absolutely exceptional, and you're right. He's just playing with so much more confidence. And again, he has a rugged nature to him. I remember talking to his USHL coach after he was drafted. He's a guy that likes to get his nose dirty, go to the hard areas, and be a guy who can be effective all over the ice. It was just a matter of him getting that opportunity. Even last year, we saw a couple of chances for him to play up in the top 6 with Blake Wheeler and I think Nikolai Ehlers at times on that second line, and he didn't look out of place at all. So for me, Mason Appleton, this has been a steady progression. There's always been something that has held him back. He's a guy who has historically been a bit of a slow starter. Even those years he finishes exceptionally well, and then he'd come to training camp the next year and just would be kind of vanilla in training camp. And that caused him 1 year to be back to the AHL and 1 year kind of around being the fourth liner and maybe an extra forward. And then he had that, terrible bad luck injury playing football before the Heritage Classic.
Yeah.
And I mean,
God,
I forget if I've told you this before, but so we're at the practice. I was just talking, I think it was with Darren Dreger, and then I was getting ready to get in the elevator, and it was one of those things where the doors were closing, and then they opened. Mason Appleton walked in on crutches, and it was like, your response is like, how's it going? Not very good. Okay. And I just finished saying to Darren Dreger, I said, Dregs, I don't see Appleton out there.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I saw him in the elevator, and I don't know if he had a walking boot on yet or not, but just a terrible bad luck for him. But again, got back up off the mat. When Jack Roslovic was not at training camp because he didn't have a contract, he knew there would be an opportunity for him. Guess what? Went out and grasped the opportunity and is not looking back. This guy is a player that's looking for more.
Yeah.
And he's said that on numerous occasions this year, Sean. You always are looking for more. And he's the kind of guy that, like Andrew Kopp, I mean, not just happy with being a very effective third line player. Those guys always want to keep pushing for more. Maybe there's, some power play time for him down the road. It's exceptional what he's been able to do at 5-on-5 play. It really is.
Look at you name dropping Dregs in the middle of this.
Yeah.
There you go. Put your steel toe boots on, everybody. Kenny's dropping names left, right, and center. I wanted to talk about this because JFWC and I have the Jedi mind meld going on. If you tuned into our pregame on Instagram, I had this theory about, and then now I honestly know we know why Lauren Brossoit is getting the start in that game, but I thought that it was very good timing for something like this to happen because of what Connor Hellebuck had done in those previous 2 games. I liked the idea of saying, okay, now you had 3 points out of 4 stolen for you by your goaltender. It's time for you little birdies to go out and fly on your own, because Papa Bear is gonna take the night off here. And JFWC says starting LB was genius because the Jets focused on playing better to support their backup. Do you see there's any legitimacy to JFWC's comments? Because I sure do, Ken.
I know you do. This was all about Connor Hellebuck earning a night off. There's no doubt about that.
But did it have this effect?
There was part of that for sure, but I would counter by saying the Jets aren't a team that is scared when their backup goalie goes in. They're confident in him because of how he's played. So I would just counter that part of it. But does it make you? I don't. The Jets knew they had to be sharper, and they committed. That's the big thing. They played a committed style of game, and they took it to the Leafs on a lot of levels. Let's not kid ourselves. You know who was tired of hearing about how the high danger chances were 21-5 or 18-4 or whoever it was? The Jets were. Yeah. But they also knew that it was a reality and a fact. So they had to go out and get and do the job and show that they could do it. And guess what? They did. I mean, that's the biggest thing that we saw here tonight. I mean, for a team that has struggled defensively on a lot of nights, they showed an ability to clamp down, and they got the job done against the best team in the North Division.
I want to go back and find this one here. Sorry, I'm doing this as I go. Okay, quick thoughts here on Sheldon's bench minor, Kenny.
Yeah, I think this was one of those situations where, I think he would have preferred to have bitten his tongue on that situation. There's no doubt about that, given the situation in the game. But to me, this was all about. It wasn't just being unhappy with the call that was made. He was already unhappy with the call that was made on Morgan Riley. The kind of the insurance goal, I think that was more about the insurance goal. I think, the baseball analogies will continue to flow.
Yeah.
This was about the
You
time,
should do golf analogies. You're the guy with two aces in one round. But hey, the multi-sport athlete, you're like the Bo Jackson of Manitoba.
I think you know what I'm going to go here, but this is about the time when the manager comes out and kicks dirt over the plate. Not because he's mad about the ball for a call, but because his pitcher got squeezed. The guy hit a 3-run homer, and now he's mad about it. He's not mad about the homer. He's mad because his pitcher already had the guy struck out. So in a tight game, you have to give Ehlers credit. He saw what was happening. It was a flip puck. This guy, there's very few people that are better in the NHL that are able to draw penalties the way Nikolai Ehlers does.
Yeah.
Is it a bit of should it have been called? Probably not. In real time, it looked worse than it probably was. But the fact that the Jets converted, that's the impressive part to me. They were able to convert, and the second unit is also able to convert. And then, Sheldon was not happy about that call. And then he's also not happy about, it was definitely a 3 or 4 car pileup. Yeah. But I think you could also make the argument on the Hyman call that the Jets player kind of knocked his own, Hyman was definitely interfering, but I think you could almost make the argument that it was more a matter of the Jets combo platter causing the fall. And as Sheldon said, that play happens a lot in a game. It was just one of those things where he was probably pretty ticked off. But that's also a coach that's ticked off about his team's effort. When they had an opportunity to say, guess what, Jets? You can't hang with us. Yeah. We're now up 8 points, and you're now in the rearview mirror. See you later.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to hijack this show back from our audience that's doing a great job of driving conversation here tonight, but you brought up Ehlers, and I got to talk about this because I was thinking this when he scored that goal late in the game. He comes off those boards, and before he shoots the puck, I'm like, he just scored, because it's the assuredness that he is heading towards the net with. And I love this line that Paul Maurice uses all the time with Nick Ehlers. What's different about Nick Ehlers this year? Well, he approaches the game as a shooter is his line. He's not looking to pass. He's not looking to skate and find a better. He's constantly head up looking to shoot the puck. And to that point, is there anyone on this Jets team that looks as confident to you right now when he's about to shoot the puck as Nick Ehlers?
Just absolutely exceptional, Sean. I mean, here's the other part of that. We've talked about this a lot. Because Neil Pionk is getting those hammering those one-timers home. You have to respect that shot from the top, and that allows Ehlers to get that speed. He does that quick button hook and then just rips it. And let's not forget, outstanding
reloads
screen by Matthew Perreault as well. But boy, oh boy, Nikolai Ehlers, I thought there were a couple of plays during the game that were just absolutely exceptional. Here's the other part about Ehlers, Sean. Early in the game, great opportunity on the 2-on-1, rips it over the top of the net. He had another great scoring chance and missed. He was ticked off about it. I think earlier on in his career, he gets so frustrated and doesn't stop playing, but he becomes less of a factor. Maybe you feel like you don't have it that night. Here, now he's like the three-point shooter that missed 6 in a row. Well, guess what? He's taken the 7th because he expects to make the next 7. So that's the big thing here for me. Ehlers playing with exceptional confidence. You know, Kyle Connor had a great opportunity. Man, I thought that power play chance on the 5-on-3 actually hit the middle bar. Like, I thought it would hit the middle post, but it went bar and out. So, and the other part, I know there's been a question about Pierre-Luc Dubois. I don't know if they added it or not. I thought Dubois should have had an assist on the Ehlers goal because I thought he had got it back to Pionk to start that whole play. I don't know if it ended up getting changed or not. In terms of his game, I've said this before. I thought there were moments during this series where Pierre-Luc Dubois was absolutely outstanding, and I think there were other parts when he was still finding his way. And I think we need to remember what this player has gone through this year in terms of first his contract negotiation in Columbus, then asking for a trade that became very public, then getting traded, then being in quarantine, then getting injured, then going from wing to center. Hey, the guy's got 2 overtime goals already. Is he at a point of game level right now? No, but I'm pretty sure you'll be able to count on Pierre-Luc Dubois when the games matter the most, and I'm seeing enough in those games that I'm not concerned, and I think he's playing fine, but I think that we've built this player up so much that some people think that, well, if he's not getting the overtime goal or getting a point every game, he's not as effective as you might expect. But this is a guy who's a consistent player, a hard-working player, and he's just starting to find his way. I think he's going to be an exceptional player for the Jets in the second half of the year and down the stretch and into the postseason.
Ken, I want to show you something here. If we're not careful by the end of this show or sometime this week, your microphone is going to have its own Twitter account. The way things are going here, people are all over. They're all over it.
Boy.
Corey Yanaka here is accusing you of stealing John Liu's microphone, and that's the TSN mic stolen angle here. I mean, people are going to be tracking stuff down here, but I want to get back to a player that we just barely touched on here. Ehlers just looks good game after game after game after game. But is Paul Stastny the best Winnipeg Jet right now?
Man, I mean, what a job by Stastny in terms of being able to elevate his game when the Jets need him. I thought there were times where that line had been having a few moments. They weren't quite in sync, if you will. And then all of a sudden, like a guy like Stastny makes just a little subtle play or makes a smart clear, or if he's under pressure, he makes the smart play, a little chip to the neutral zone. And then lo and behold, he just comes through with an absolutely brilliant redirection. I mean, the other day he gets the tying goal with the extra attacker. He's in perfect position. I mean, we had this conversation with Jennifer Botterill last Friday on our show. Yep. Jen reiterated a lot of that today in one of the intermissions. This is a guy, Paul Maurice talked about it again this morning, answering Jen Botterill's question about what the veterans have meant. This guy, from the very first hit that you and I did after the move was made, Sean, this guy is a connector on this team. He's able to connect with the veteran players who are in his age category, but he also has an ability to connect with the younger players. And Nate Schmidt told me this in my preseason piece, or the piece that I did on Paul Stastny. Not only does Paul Stastny love talking about hockey, he loves talking about world events, about business. This guy's just a curious individual. And again, his reaction to being told Neil Pionk just finished his degree. He was happy for Neil Pionk. He was also made a point of saying, I'm jealous because I want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to do that myself. When he left school early, it mattered to him because he wants to get his degree too. Just a curious guy. He's a guy who loves the game so much, and he is so driven to win. And I think there's a part of this that we haven't really discussed very much, and Paul hasn't discussed it, and I don't think that he necessarily would. But here's a guy that made a 3-year commitment to the Vegas Golden Knights, and then Vegas, for cap reasons, had to move him. I think that it would be impossible for Paul Stastny to not take that personally. Even we know it's not personal, but it's impossible to have that happen to you and have to say, man, I'll show them that I still have something left in the tank. I know that Kelly McCrimmon and those guys had an enormous amount of respect for Paul Stastny, and the way that things went, when they were unable to make another move, they had to clear that money out. So, but still, I think that Paul Stastny's always been a determined individual. I laughed at those, the conversations that Paul they're legitimate questions. Are you motivated by a new contract? Well, guess what? This guy's motivated regardless.
Yeah.
And he's such a perfect fit here. Again, we've talked about this before. I have to think there's a way for the Jets to keep him around for another year. Obviously, it would be at a reduced rate, but man, he's a guy that they want to keep in the mix. And he's a guy who can be effective in the top 6. He can also be effective on the third line. We saw the first time he played on left wing with Lowry and Appleton. He was very good. So I don't see him ever bumping down to the fourth line, but I think that he's a guy that could stick around beyond this year, and we know that the Jets have the utmost respect for him as well. And Stastny's enjoying himself. Every time you hear him talk at a podium, you see it on the ice. The guy's always smiling. He's always talking about the game. Every shift. Paul Maurice said every practice, this guy's spending an extra 20 minutes. You see him on the bench, Sean. He's always talking. They're on the iPad. They're saying, oh, what about this? When you see the defenseman turn to his right, attack him there. I'll go to the front of the net. And the other thing that we've seen with Stastny, so many of his points are coming at even strength, Sean. For a veteran player, it's impressive. And I also think we've seen, not necessarily as much tonight, but in the last game, he had a couple great chances from that high slot area. The Jets haven't found that happy zone very often, but Blake Wheeler found him. Stastny just didn't quite get the full Monty on his shot. He didn't quite get all of it, but he's got a couple of really important chances. And man, oh man, 9 goals already. I mean, he gives you so much that go beyond the numbers, but then the numbers are also there to back up his play. He looks rejuvenated to me, and I think that he's settling in, feeling confident, and I think he's got another level to reach. Again, this is a guy who has playoff experience. He was critical in that 2018 run. No better example than in Game 7, where he was a dominant force. He was the one who chased Pekka Rinne from that game with that sharp angle shot. I think 2-1 for 3 in that game, in that Game 7 road victory. This guy wants to win. He wants to get his name engraved on the cup, loves the history of the game, and he wants to leave an impact on this Winnipeg Jets organization as well.
So, when I host Hockey Night in Canada games, it's my job to kind of bring little inside stories that hopefully shed a little light on parts of the game. If I was doing the next game, I would be getting my editors to cut video of Paul Stastny getting in the way. Now, we talked about how good that top line played tonight. Paul Stastny, we talk about him being sneaky. We talk about him doing all the right things. Watch how often he gets in the way. And what I mean by that is when his guys have the puck and the forecheckers are coming down to buy them time, Paul Stastny just gets into their lane and skates in their lane ahead of them, but a little slow. It's like when you're trying to get to work really fast and that guy keeps cutting in front of you in your lane and you can't get past him and he's going 20 kilometers slower than what you want to go. That's what Paul Stastny is a genius at. He entirely takes guys' momentum. He buys time for his teammates. That is just one of those tiny little things that other players, what they do to slow players down? They kind of throw a shoulder into them, or they get their stick into him and take a penalty and try and hold them back. Paul Stastny knows where you want to go, and he gets there ahead of you, and then he slows you down in the process. He's a genius at it. It was on full display tonight, and when he's doing that and when other people are following their lead, the Jets have a night like what we saw tonight. He is an all-around, has a global influence, and then he goes and gets the kind of goal he got tonight, which really, to me, is the turning point in that game. That game could have gone in a different direction, but that's a beautiful, beautiful redirect. And to me, that's the point of the game where this game turned tonight. And now we're talking about the Jets being potentially Canada's top team instead of talking about the Jets having been lucky to get away with 3 points out of 6. And the Toronto Maple Leafs really showing they were the dominant team other than a hot Connor Hellebuck.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's look at that second period. The Jets were playing well, and suddenly they look up on the board and they're down 2-1. It would have been easy for them to abandon ship, abandon everything that they had done defensively. Again, tough shorthanded goal against, and then Willie Nylander with selling the look off and then squeezing that shot through the wickets. I mean, that was one of them where that was like the deflating of the balloon. The needle got popped in on that one, and I'm sure there were a lot of Winnipeg Jets fans sitting on their respective couches and thinking, oh boy, all of a sudden you're going to look up and it's going to be 4-1. And then that's the time when the Leafs leave the Jets in the dust. No, instead the Jets find a way. Again, it's funny. We know the Jets aren't going to be a shoot from everywhere team, but how do they get things turned around? Mark Scheifele finds a little quiet zone up top near the blue line, rifles it on net. Paul Stastny's there for the redirection. And again, double screen by the Jets there, Wheeler up top as well. It was an important game for that top line to get going, and they really did get going. And as you mentioned, I agree, that's an absolutely critical goal for the Jets to just reset, take a deep breath, and say, hey, tie game going into the third. Let's see what happens here.
To your point about what you just brought up about Scheifele, I take a look at the Scheifele goal. I take a look at the Ehlers goal. And I think what the Jets did well tonight is they took the space that was given to them by the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, Mark Scheifele was asked about that goal, and he said they collapsed, and I just moved in and then took that shot. But in both those cases, I thought the Jets did a good job of not trying to rush, not panicking, not trying to jam down low. They allowed Toronto to set up and looked at the ice that they were willing to give them, and they burnt them with the ice that they were willing to give them. I thought the interesting part about that Stastny goal is he's got a guy on his right-hand side, and what's the ice that they give him? It's on the other side of Stastny. So Stastny makes eye contact with Mark Scheifele, and you can see Scheifele on the replay comes around, he's on the top, and he looks up and he sees him, and he fires that puck. If Paul Stastny doesn't redirect that, how far does that miss the net by? 2 to 3 feet? I mean, that is a clear pass, and yet it's a shot through the air in the space that the Toronto Maple Leafs gave the Winnipeg Jets. That's where Stastny's stick was. The redirect has, and again, we've talked about the importance of that goal, but I thought that the Jets were very smart tonight in not pressing things and did a very good job of recognizing the ice that was there and using the ice that was there to beat the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Right, and you know why that nonverbal communication is apparent, because these guys are talking about hockey every single day, and they're looking at ways to improve and when they can get things going for them. I'm so impressed by that, and we know from 2018 that Mark Scheifele had a connection with Paul Stastny right away because they love the game, because they like talking about the game, and I think it's really helped. I mean, the one thing that we've noticed, Mark Scheifele is in a better mood most days around the rink that we've seen, and he looks like the guy that loves hockey again.
Yes,
and that's a really important thing for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah.
Let's go to Brossoit quickly. I think we got a couple.
Okay. Yeah. Let's, you know what? It may be hard for me to, one thing, everyone, thanks so much for your comments. You're doing a great job tonight. I'm trying to monitor them as we're doing this, and there's just so much. If I missed you, I'm sorry. We value everything that you send in this direction. And I know that people were talking about Brossoit.
So let's at the lake here, I think.
Do you have it?
Yeah.
Can you click on it there, or am I the only one in control of it?
Let's go there.
Look at you. Why am I doing all this work if you can do this too? What's happening here?
You're the TV guy here. Come on. Sorry, Blake, if you're still with us, I don't know. Lauren Brossoit will not be getting the start on Monday. No. The reason why he was in there was to give Connor Hellebuck a little bit of a breather. Friday, Saturday, Sunday breather. He'll be back in on Monday, and that's where he belongs. I mean, let's not forget he had 70 saves in the previous 2 games. This is not a knock on Lauren Brossoit, but Connor Hellebuck is the guy for the Jets. Brossoit will be used this month. There's a couple back-to-backs, and he'll probably get another start, which is what we expected. But that's the way that's what he needs to keep doing. That's a 4th consecutive win for Brossoit. Shook off that early disallowed goal. It's so important. Oh, Sammy Joe, thanks for joining us.
Oh, geez.
There's
Do you
someone
have
who knows
Sammy
it.
Joe's number? We should bring, if Sammy Joe's going to show up for our show, she should be in our show. We should just text her the link and she should
Send,
hop into this show.
send her the link. I do have it. Hang on a second.
Well, we can't, unless you, since you've got some control over here, we didn't know you have. If you want to invite her and bring her in here, that would be great. But
you have to send the link, I think. I don't have the ability to send the link.
Well, you'd have to text me her number then, and I'd have to send it along, because I don't think it's the best idea for us to broadcast it here across.
No. We won't do that. We
won't do that. Yeah.
But again, great job by Bressois, and thanks, Sammy Joe, for coming in.
Thank you for coming in and leaving a comment. That's awesome. Legend just pops in and leaves a comment.
Proud Winnipegger. And
oh
legend.
My goodness, you are welcome here anytime, Sammy Joe.
And speaking of plugs, she's got a book out. People should be checking that out if they haven't done so already.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. You finished up your point on Bressois?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
You're done with that?
Sorry, one other thing. Sorry, what did you think?
You weren't done. You had lots.
No, you're right. You're right. Just getting rolling. Amazing, everybody. Amazing. Thank you for showing up here. I mean, I think this is our third now, and incredible support. Thanks for coming over. We got tons of people in the queue here. We love the commentary. The one thing, what did you? Were you curious at all of how long it took for that hand pass to be called? What was going on there?
I don't know. To be honest, I thought the reffing's been strange in this series. Like I do think Sheldon Keefe kind of blowing it at the end of this was a cumulative thing. I mean, that the overtime. I wanted to ask you this after our last post game, when Morgan Riley's stick gets broken. I mean, is that not an obvious penalty when he runs back to the bench? Like, how are these things being missed? I mean, we were supposed to have got to the stage in this league where if you stick checked a guy at any point and gave him a little hook, that was an excuse to give a guy a penalty. You just, hey, if you don't want to get called, you don't put your stick there. We went from that to this year. It really seems like we're starting to get back in that territory of refs are going to say, like, yeah, he slashed you, but maybe he didn't slash you hard enough for it to be an impact. Like, all these plays that are happening, I thought it was strange in this series. To be honest with you, I thought the reffing was worse in that Montreal series. Before that, the people in Montreal, and we talked to Double E, Eric Engels all the time, they were furious in that series. And the Josh Anderson slew foot that ended up taking him out of that series, and for a good chunk of time seemed like a pretty obvious play, and it happened right.
I was tripping though. It was tripping. It shouldn't have been. It wasn't a slew foot like with intent to injure, but it was definitely tripping.
No. Yeah, but there's no call on it, is there not?
Right. That was a miss. And I think there was the high stick in the corner that Perry...
I hate being that guy who rags on reffing. It's stupid to do so, and I get that. But to your point, it's like I'm not making sense of a lot of the stuff that we're seeing. Scotty Billick's coming in. Oh, man, that's Scotty's trashing you. You brought him up. You brought him up in a positive way. You gave him credit earlier on, and
for
he
a great
walks
question.
in here,
Yeah,
and he's talking trash. We'll have to have a conversation with him after this.
Did you think that Bressois?
He's right, though. He's right. Look, he's right.
It's true.
Do I
it's
need
true.
to tell you to stop talking?
We want to move on from Bressois, but again, perfect shot by Engvall. But did you think that he needed a reset, or did that allow him to reset and get comfortable after the goal was disallowed? It must have. To me, it seemed like one of those situations where it was so obvious that the call was going to be made that the goalie kind of relaxed. And that's what, I mean, it was a good shot, don't get me wrong, but it just seemed like he was expecting it to be called, and then the kind of shot kind of almost caught him off guard.
Yeah, again, I think we've seen examples throughout this season of it seems like as soon as there's any kind of goaltender interference, that everyone just gives up on the play, or the goaltender definitely does. And so I find in these situations that it seems like the refs have made a couple calls. I thought there was one in that, remember the Vancouver game, Stastny scores in front of the net, where it's not Demko. It's who's the other Canucks goaltender? from Washington. Braden Holtby
Yep.
dives out to get a puck, and he doesn't get it. At some point, I think he feels like there's goaltender interference, and he just doesn't try to get back into it. I don't know. To me, it feels like there's been a couple calls where goaltenders have got away with. There was an obvious one in Montreal that Brendan Gallagher was absolutely furious with right before the Jets series. And it feels like there's been some times players have gotten away with it, and it feels like there's no standard, and so there's just, like you said, guys are just giving up on plays after something happens. So I mean, you know what? I'm kind of upset at myself for taking it down this road. I don't like to be the guy who rags on refs. I think
it's a hard job. We know it's a hard job.
The best thing to do is to just like, okay, you get a bad call. It's going to even out at some point. Let's move off from it. I do think that Sheldon Keefe's response tonight was a response of like, when are we going to get some consistency in this series? But yeah, I feel like I opened a door I didn't want to go down here, and I feel like I kicked the door open and kind of like Kool-Aid guy.
Let's move on. Let's move on. Somebody had asked about Jansen Harkins. Yes, he is a healthy scratch, Marco. Chomping at the bit to get in there, of course. Obviously, we've talked a lot about how that lower body injury, groin injury, whatever it ended up being in training camp, sort of set him back a little bit at a time where he was looking great out of the gate. Then I think he played around 9 games and then got hurt again. And it's been a tough time for him to get in, no doubt about that. But with 17 games this month, I can't imagine he doesn't get an opportunity to get in. And when he does get in, obviously it'll be tough because it's been a while since he's been in. But we know based on the way that he played last year, based on how hard he works, he's going to have an opportunity to try to get back in there and make a contribution. But I mean, right now it's tough. I mean, Paul Maurice likes his fourth line. Matthew Perreault's playing great. He feels confident with Nate Thompson and Trevor Lewis. Lewis had a great chance. I think it might actually even hit the crossbar there in the third period. The penalty kill was pretty good for the most part for the Jets again. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's obviously a development we didn't expect. We thought Jansen Harkins would probably be in the lineup a lot. And again, what I would reiterate, it's almost halfway done the year, but last year it took a while for Jansen Harkins to get in there. When he did, he showed that he belonged. So I expect that when that opportunity comes, he's going to be ready and play well.
All right, Kenny, I'm going to take Scott Billick's advice, and I'm going to give you one last thing to talk about here. Blake at the Lake says, thoughts on Montreal on Monday. I'm actually fascinated by this because the way I was looking at this series and the way Montreal had been playing was I thought there was potential for the Jets to exit this series and the Montreal Canadiens playing a Calgary team that has a new coach. There was potential for the Jets to be going into that series against Montreal, trailing Montreal in that series. Instead, Calgary is able to get the immediate bounce back from hiring Mr. Sutter that the Montreal Canadiens were not able to get from hiring Mr. Ducharme. And now I walk into that and I wonder how the Montreal Canadiens feel heading into this series after they've been touched up in 2 games where they were absolutely shut down by this Calgary Flames team who is now chasing them and not far behind them. Never mind worrying about the Montreal Canadiens jockeying for second place with the Winnipeg Jets. They got to look over their shoulder now and worry about that 4th place spot with Calgary suddenly charging hard. Do you give a big advantage to the Winnipeg Jets with the somewhat bit of a cushion they've been able to create and the fact that Montreal is now kind of in the frying pan?
Yeah, I'd be leery of giving an advantage to a team that just smoked the Jets 7-1. I mean, things change quickly in this division. I've been speaking with a lot of people in the Calgary media. They're very curious about how this experiment is going to go. They know that Daryl Sutter will demand accountability, and in the first 2 games, he's got accountability. They outshot Montreal 36-25 today. For all the times that we've seen Montreal, power home 40-plus shots a night against the Jets. It seems a bit surprising. I didn't see any of the game tonight. Obviously, we were watching the Jets tonight. So
I just saw the stats, and to your point, I was thinking to myself, like, they worked them. Those games, they must have worked them in those 2 games.
Smothered them, exactly, defensively. And that's an area that Calgary had really struggled with their defensive zone commitment this year. We know that, awesome. Yeah, it's Sammy, we're going to get you in to talk goaltending one of these weeks for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for going in here. I mean, Montreal, I would not take my foot off the gas if I were the Jets. But here's the other part, Sean. Much like tonight was a bit of a statement game for them, I think Monday night is almost the exact same thing for them. No, you're not testing yourself against the number one team in the division, but with Toronto playing in Ottawa tomorrow night, it's a back-to-back. It's tough, sure, but all of a sudden the Jets could be 6 back. Yes, they'd have 3 in hand, but if you don't win those games in hand, it means nothing. So the fact that a team kicked the Jets essentially in the teeth in the last meeting, I think they'll be on high alert and wanting to show Montreal that was the outlier that Blake Wheeler described it last Saturday night, right around the same time. So I think it's going to be a great series. We know that Montreal has been playing well recently up until these last 2 games. So I think they're going to be 2 outstanding series. And like we talked about, well done by the Jets to smother the Leafs in this last game, but they didn't do that in the previous 2. So
no.
They're going to have to do that against Montreal also. And again, 2 of those games went to overtime. They were super tight. They're almost always tight when those 2 teams get together. The Canadiens have given the Jets trouble with their speed at times. We know the goaltending has been a little bit up and down for Montreal. Only giving up 3 tonight. I mean, that's not a goaltending issue. That's a getting beat issue and not generating enough. So the other part of that too, Sean, they're going to be a hungry team coming into Winnipeg on Monday night as well. So I think it'll be an excellent couple of games. We said the contenders would probably start to separate themselves here in the month of March. And hey, the month of March is only almost halfway over.
Right.
So the fun and the turbulent times are still here to come. Sorry, I wanted to finish my thought about Calgary. Calgary's in a great position. No, here. The fans in Winnipeg have been going crazy for the last 2 games, Sean.
I'm starting a clock on you, Kenny. I'm going to start a clock, and the alarm will go off, and I will just cut you off. I swear.
Hey, we got we got to give the people what they want.
Okay,
There's
Kenny,
still 160 people here still. The Calgary market, they thought they were, they're out, they trying to make sure they're not out of it, but they had been in crisis mode for the entire month. So it's just been interesting here to see how things have been going. Nobody's out. Nobody's really out except for Ottawa. I think these teams will continue to battle hard against one another. And as impressive as the showing for the Jets was tonight, they have to make sure that this wasn't their one-off when it comes to how they played defensively. That needs to be closer to the standard bar that they set instead of being the team that gives up 35-plus shots a night.
All right. Hey, I said I was going to cut you off. It was over. I'm giving you bonus time because you know what I realized? We did not address this question. We have to address this question before we go. If you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, how do you feel walking away from this series?
I think you touched on it earlier. I think this is a confident group, so I don't think you're going to hear any public chatter about how the Jets maybe instilled that little bit of doubt that you asked about after the other night's game. And again, tonight, players were very dismissive again as well. But I think if you're injecting those same players with a bit of truth serum, they absolutely got on that plane tonight and said, guess what?
Yeah.
The Leafs are not head and shoulders above the rest. They're very good. And they're, I would even go as far as saying they're an excellent team, but they're not an unbeatable team.
No.
Hey, I will say this. 2 years ago, the Jets played in Tampa in March, the year that they were, a record-setting team. I came out of that game thinking, hey, there is not one team in the NHL that could beat Tampa in a 7-game series 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to them? They got swept. They didn't even win a single game against the 8th seed. And that's not a knock on the Columbus Blue Jackets. That's an absolute fact that sometimes the best teams get goalied. And I mean, hey, the Leafs got hellebucked once this week, and they almost got hellebucked twice. So, hey, it's wide open. We're only getting close to the fun part. It's been fun so far this week. It's been a great series, but things are just getting started. There's going to be more twists and turns, and that's why people want to talk about it, and that's why we're so happy that people have been with us. As Sean mentioned, check out our podcast. Both the last 2 episodes are up on our YouTube page. There were just some fantastic insight from Jennifer Botterill, Chris Johnston, and Anthony Stewart and Elliot Friedman on our last 2 shows. We had so much fun doing those shows, and the feedback that we've been getting both publicly and privately has been exceptional, guys. Thanks so much.
Means the world too.
Keep that coming, and thanks for spreading the word, and thanks for joining us for these things. Our plan was to go half an hour, and we're coming up on 55 minutes here.
I know.
And the conversation is still rolling here, and there was a lot of great stuff we couldn't get to. The good news is we'll get to it in our Instagram Live on Monday for the pregame show.
That's right. Hey, Ken, I want to say I've had a ton of fun with you this week. We've been doing this. We popped on, decided to start doing post games. We've been doing pre-games, post games. We've been doing the big long form thing that we do on Friday, which I'm so proud of. And really, as Kenny said, everyone should go and check that out. It is really, really good stuff. Anthony Stewart was just phenomenal. We spent how much time talking about that afterwards. But yeah, we're having a ton of fun. And I'm going to tell you, people, I learned, McStuttering Buddha is onto something here. I learned something. I've been told all my life that I'm a blabbermouth and I talk a lot, and I've more than met my match.
You've got no chance. You have
more
no
than
chance.
met my match
No
with
chance.
this guy. I defer. I bow down. Ken's got the strongest tongue muscle I think I've ever met in my life. He blows us out of the water. Everybody, thank you so much for showing up. We love your comments. It's been so much fun spending time with you. Keep showing up. Go to our YouTube page. Subscribe. We're going to have tons of great content for you. That's where this kind of stuff is going to live. We've got lots more coming. Ken and I can't get enough of spending time with each other lately, so we just might as well keep putting content out there. Really appreciate your time. We'll see you on the pregame. If you want to join us on Instagram before the next game, we urge you to come do so. And other than that, we'll see you post game, and we'll keep looking for Ken's stories on Sportsnet. Keep looking for my stuff on Sportsnet. Really appreciate it. Have a great night, everybody. And I get the last word, Ken. That's it.